Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. What are some examples of this? If you're a US citizen, 25 or older, are unmarried, and make less than $30,000 a year, you can get a free, grant-funded ride through community college if you specify on the FAFSA that your parents will not be helping you. I used it to learn how to weld, but it can be applied to anything from IT to any other well-paying skill you can think of. It's like raising kids. You're not raising the kid you have now, you're raising the adult they'll be. Sometimes you just have to let them, force them to spend the time doing something that would take you 5 minutes. Making sure your parents actually fix some of their tech problems themselves so that they don't constantly badger you for help doing things like installing a web browser or finding an app on their phone. My mother called me to ask how to get to an address for work. I tried to explain how easy Google Maps is on her phone and she wanted none of that and eventually hung up on me. Any work scenario where someone gets mad at you for not knowing something, you can lose your mind if something isn't done to your standard, or you can teach them how to do it so that they complete it satisfactorily moving forward. I had a big fight with a shift manager over this. No, I cannot make the evening side dishes. Yes, I've worked here for years. Nobody showed me how to, even though I repeatedly asked you fuck nugget. Give a puppy a ball and she's happy for a minute. Teach a puppy to fetch a ball and she wants to play fetch all the time. Anytime you sit down, it never stops. OMG, what have I done? I had a cat named Simba who figured out the game himself. 3 AM and I would hear a jingle mouse being dropped on my pillow, followed with him meowing and pawing me to throw it. Back in college, my cousins would always ask me to bring home some movies on the weekends. It got a little too much, so I just taught them how to torrent LMAO. Epic example. Chiropractic care versus seeing a physician specializing in musculoskeletal medicine who can counsel the patient on the importance of muscle balance, activity modification, and the importance of compliance with home therapy programs. Chiro adjustments undoubtedly help with pain, but if you don't fix the underlying imbalance, then you're just going to line the pockets of your chiropractor and never be satisfied. That's the chiropractor versus physical therapist thing. My sister is the latter, and I've heard several rants about how chiropractors are fine for quick fixes, but if that's all they do, it will loosen the joint muscle and actually make it more of a chronic issue. Of course, some chiropractors don't care. More job security for them. Some chiropractors are fine, but there are a lot of shady ones. Education. It's one thing to get a degree, and that is a great accomplishment, but if you are led the whole way by professors and classmates, it does nothing to prepare you for the real world. You have to learn how to educate yourself so that you may go through life with the ability to learn on your own, and more importantly, see where you need to learn in order to grow in the direction you want. Muad'Dib learned rapidly because his first training was in how to learn, and the first lesson of all was the basic trust that he could learn. It's shocking to find how many people do not believe they can learn, and how many more believe learning to be difficult. Muad'Dib knew that every experience carries its lesson. Frank Herbert, Dune. The Socratic method is about not giving the student the answer, but asking him enough questions to figure it out him or herself. People learn better when they arrive at the conclusion themselves, rather than just memorizing random facts with no context. I agree with this method to an extent. There are some supervisors who use this 100%, and it wastes more time to just give the answer when it is not needing a critical thinking or subjective answer. Ask my stepdad to borrow a tool and he'll come do the work for me. Then he caught on, bought himself new tools and gave me his old ones. Free tools, woot. I'm a chef, and have been for 20+ years. I've had a fuck ton of people that have wanted to be apprentices. Most don't last a week, but further than that, bread, before even getting apprentices to peel stuff etc. I get them to make bread, because bread, once they've made the recipe a few times, I get them to try and make a flavor of their choice. Typically they'll use an ingredient with extra liquid, and not think about how that will affect the texture, but you let them go and do their thing. It usually turns out completely crap, and then after you talk with them about what went right, what went wrong, how to change recipes on the fly while keeping things within the parameters of the expected outcome, you can always teach, but you can never force people to learn. you can also not expect people to just know the outcome. There's tons of microfinance schemes which do exactly this. Muhammad Yunus got a Nobel Peace Prize for setting up a bank, Grameen Bank, which primarily dealt in microloans to women in Bangladesh. Give them a microloan to buy 2 chickens. Those chickens will lay eggs and make other chickens which can be sold and buy more chickens and so on. I've seen schemes here in the UK and US with microloans for things like help to get tools to start a gardening business. Kiva was a well-known org which did crowdfunded versions. Sort of. The loans have nil or minimal interest and are backed by eternal parties. Whilst the Kiva concept was that your money would help a lady in Fiji buy a loom, the money donated to Kiva never actually went to the final recipient. Local banks provided the loans and Kiva provided security on them. The World Builders charity is all about this. Instead of loans they use charity money to gift the animals and training. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it. A. Einstein. I don't remember saying that. A. Einstein. I used to open and close the kitchen door for the cat whenever he wanted in or out. Then, I installed a pet door and taught him how to use it. Now, he comes and goes as he likes, without need of valet service. This feels like a cat door ad. Side note, I tried to use this idiom with a coworker once. She asked me to do something for her that she didn't know how. I started showing her how to do it instead of just doing it and walking away. She asked me why I was trying to teach her and I started to say, "Give a man a fish," and she cut me off by saying, "I'm not a man." I changed the idiom to give a woman a fish and you feed her for a day. When she cut me off again to say, "I don't eat fish." She also asked me for help once carrying a box of fairly light supplies, to which I said that looks like a one-man job, and she responded by putting them back and saying, "If that's the case, why don't you do it as one man?" Teach a man to fish, and now he has to buy a fishing rod and apply for a fishing license. He will need to take out a car loan to drive to the lake, and the lake is privately owned, so he will have to pay for access to the lake, and the camping fees, and the car insurance. Now the man is caught in a 9-6 rat race and he kills himself because there is no way out of the debt pit. That's not how fishing works. You left out the buy a boat, then buy a bigger boat part. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Don't teach a man how to fish and you feed yourself. He's a grown man. Fishing is not that hard. Ron Swanson. Fish, for sport only, not for meat. Fish meat is practically a vegetable. Also Ron Swanson. This kind of speaks to the lack of survival home skills a lot of us have. It used to be that skills like darning socks, sewing, making jam and pickles, etc. was passed down through generations. Now, we don't have time and don't learn these skills from our parents. Unless maybe you were Mennonite, grew up on a farm. It's cheap and easy to buy new socks, and planned obsolescence means most technology has a short life. It's sad because it just increases consumerism and waste, and we have lost certain fundamental life skills. Work your butt off every day following the Amazon warehouse rules. Learn how to not die picking products, and Jeff Bezos will get to take a space trip. There is a saying that if you educate a boy, you educate a man. If you educate a girl, you educate a family. Basically, teaching women breaks the cycle of poverty because as a parent they can then teach their children. Saturday, the 12th of June, 1983, Johann Bergmeister of Rostock went with his family to Nordsee for lunch, a German fast food chain specializing in seafood. His father purchased him a meal of 2 lightly fried fish fillets and pommes frites. It was a hectic day, and they had skipped breakfast in order to get the day rolling. He would later skip dinner, as well. He then took an apprenticeship at a fishery some years later. The work was grueling but honest. He did not make much on a daily basis, but Johann was diligent and saved as much as he could. He'd eat from his catch, surviving off a mostly pescatarian diet. However, due to rising mercury levels in seafood, he slowly began to suffer from paranoia. He wouldn't trust his fellow fishermen who'd share the deck with him. Mein Fisch, Den Fisch, unser Fisch, ich möchte kein Fisch. Johann became convinced that his boatmates were actually fish spies. who had taken human form in order to fish people. He confronted Hans, the captain of the small ship. His accusations were dismissed under the assumption that he had been drinking. Soon afterwards, Johann decided to enact his revenge on the fish spies. He left the fishery and moved to England. He started a number of businesses that all failed. He no longer ate fish, but the mercury had already done his damage. As a paranoid schizophrenic, he was unable to secure lasting employment, and having spent all his savings into failed business ventures, he became homeless. He lived the rest of his life in the outskirts of Essex, scavenging scraps to feed himself. Eventually, his paranoia led him to believe that the scraps were out to get him, too, leading to a final fast, until death took him away from his starvation. Cousin of mine was a single mom on welfare with no real education or job skills. After using the government programs and doing online education, she got her real estate license and climbed out of poverty. She doing good. Give a man a parachute, and he can fly for a few minutes. Push him out of the plane, and he can fly for the rest of his life. Make a fishing line for a man and he will catch fish with it until it's broken. Teach him how to make a fishing line and he will fish forever. Humanitarian work, giving money to government or even building important infrastructure for them is not as helpful as it might seem and leaves the locals feeling small and dependent. Instead, teach locals how to build important infrastructure. Hire them, let them build it up instead of foreign volunteers. Help them to know how to help themselves. Also, they are more capable than foreigners as they know how to create things that can withstand their climate and other factors. Let them use their local knowledge. So yeah, teach them how to fish and buy their fish. Instead of just fixing my brother's bike, I taught him how to fix it himself. And now he's taught his 2 younger brothers. I'm a proud big sister. You can give a man a fish and then teach him how to fish, and it's a heck of a lot easier to learn how to fish when you're not starving. My ex-brother-in-law helped teach me how to change my rotors and brake pads recently and watched me as I did it, giving me feedback as I went. I now feel super competent. I won't ever be overcharged for brakes again. I love having the skills to do things myself instead of being at the mercy of an industry that seems to overcharge, especially single women in my experience. Show a man a meme on Reddit. Here you have given the man a fish to eat. Make a Reddit account for him and let him join meme communities. Here you have taught him how to fish. Learning to read. We take it for granted, but when you meet someone who cannot read you realize just how hard their life is in the modern world. Cooking. It amazes me how many people get away with never cooking. Either they leave it to someone else or order out. Home cooking is healthier, cheaper, provides leftovers for days to come and can be a unique experience. Weird as it is, I find it fun to experiment with recipes and alter tastes. And cooking doesn't even have to be hard. It's as simple as throwing something in the slow cooker while you're at work or frying eggs over the stove top. My dad is a 71 years old university teacher. He lacks basic skills in technology. He has a hard time making the difference between Chrome and a folder on his PC. But then pandemic hit and he had to give his class on Zoom. It was a challenge. So I taught him and spent a lot of time with him. I kept telling him I can do it for you, but then you won't learn and you'll be stuck if I am not there. At the end he was still asking me help for basic stuff and I helped him, but he still got better over time. But I realized that he just couldn't fish even though I taught him. So sometimes you have to accept that old people don't assimilate that as well, and that for you to teach someone how to fish they must be willing to learn. My dad wasn't. So I gave him hundreds of fishes in the end and taught him how to fish the most basic ones. One time when I was working as a cook, a server who liked me asked me to open a jar for her. I showed her that trick where you pop it with a spoon and she acted ultra disappointed. Then later I realized she wanted me to be a big strong man and open the jar for her with my hands. I wasn't into her, but I still cringe every time I think about how stupid and oblivious I was. I showed a guy from my office how to change the engine and cabin air filters for less than $25 with Amazon filters. He's been getting jabbed for $70 every 6 months x2 cars by his oil change shop for a few years. Instead of doing it for him, I made him do it. He couldn't believe how easy it was and how he could just do it in his driveway. My friends taking me to the strip club showed me how to waste my money, and from that day I definitely knew how to go broke. My entire relationship with money, my entire life I have not really had to worry about money. I always had a roof over my head and food. My parents taught me nothing about how much something costs, so much so when I went to college at 19 my entire existence could be summed up into the Lucille Bluth meme, what does a banana cost, Michael? $10? I'm in heavy debt because I never learned the value of a dollar, and to this day have to reteach myself every time I want something frivolous. If they had sat me down, talked to me about budgeting and the importance of saving money, my entire life would be different now. Now I am teaching myself how to fish. There are times when I still think about how much things cost in terms of how many hours I have to work to earn that much money. I'll be 52 in a couple months, working since I was 14. Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Offer him a fish a day to work for you for 8 hours. Then take him on your boat, show him the nets and sonar, teach him to use them and pull out 100 fishes a day, and give him one. He will get all mad now because you taught him to fish and he can do it himself. Then remind him he doesn't own a boat and could never afford one on his measly 1 fish a day salary. My sister owns her first truck and it needs quite a bit of work, so when I work on it, I teach her as I work on it. Next vehicle she gets, she'll know how to change a tire, and buy new tires that are the right size, change the brakes, rotors, wheel hubs, sway bar links, tie rods, suspension, hood, grille, and bumper. She'll know how to do an oil change, bleed brakes, charge an AC, fill the other vehicle fluids, read an owner's manual and a Haynes manual. She'll know how to use a ton of different tools. She's even starting her own little tool collection. Most importantly, she'll know how to troubleshoot issues herself and research the proper and safe means of deal with a new issue, or to understand if it's something out of her scope and if she should consult a professional. All this work goes from costing thousands by having everything done in a shop, to hundreds doing it yourself. Literally anything in the factory I work in. Fix someone's 40-year-old machine. It will work for 30 minutes before breaking again. Teach the stupid mother how not to break it and it can go 1 hour before breaking again. Me, I'm the stupid mother. Give a man a plane ticket. He flies for a short period of his life. Throw a man out of a plane. He flies for the rest of his life. Giving someone a job with a high social mobility. Teaching a person pretty much any marketable skill. Teach a person about economy and personal finance, investing. Remember, you can give someone a fish, then teach them to fish. People learn better when they aren't starving. Not mine. Seen on Twitter. My dad changed my brother's oil whenever it was needed. He decided he didn't want to change 4 vehicles on a regular basis. Taught me to change oil. I've in turn taught my ex, 2 of my nieces, and will likely never have to pay for an oil change. And I get paid to change my brother's oil. Microloans in large parts of rural and poverty-stricken Africa have been sparking a real economy and productivity boom. A lot of aid money never saw the light of day, and through contractors, advisors and straight up bribes in order to do business at all, ended up in the pockets of corrupt officials of one kind or another, or their friends and family. I manufacture parts out of metal. I can program the machines for my employees to run, or I can teach them to program the machines themselves so they can't run them alone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.